fellow romance readers, I'm Amy.
And I'm Sarah, and this is Post-Book Depression. You know that feeling you get when you finish a good book that you didn't want to end?
Have you finished a book and just weren't ready to move on from the story and its beloved characters? You find yourself needing just a little more? This multi-trope romance podcast gives you the opportunity to dig deeper with us into books we love as we discuss all the reasons we can't move on.
Feeling chatty? You can continue the conversation with us on Instagram at Post-Book Depression Podcast or on Facebook in our Post-Book Depression discussion group.
We would be so grateful if you would subscribe to our podcast and take a moment to leave a review.
Are you ready? Let's discuss.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Amy.
And I'm Sarah, and today we're going to be discussing Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez.
The first few minutes we're going to do a brief review of the story without any spoilers, then we are going to shift into a deeper book discussion. It's going to include lots of spoilers, but don't worry, we're going to let you know before we do shift into that deeper book discussion.
That's right, so before we dive into the discussion, Amy, tell us what Just for the Summer is all about.
A guy who thinks he has a dating curse that forces women he breaks up with to find their soulmate, he makes a post on a Reddit thread about his problem. A traveling nurse with the same condition posts a reply and they agree to date each other to break the curse. This rom-com is full of humor, friendship, and overcoming involuntary hardships. Sarah, what did you think about Just for the Summer?
Okay, well, I'm a sucker for Abby's writing. She always has the ability to pull me in immediately within that first chapter with humor. She is so talented at writing these comedic moments and these characters who are very humorous. But what I really love about this story is that there's a lot of depth to it. You get this rom-com vibe, but you get a story with some depth, with some characters that go through some hard things. You find yourself sympathizing, maybe empathizing, maybe relating to them. And I just feel like she is so talented at being able to write a story that has a lot of heartfelt moments, some serious components, but she keeps that humor all throughout. So Abby can do no wrong in my book. I really loved this one.
I think you nailed it. This is the best combination of humor and depth. It's an emotional book at times. It had me in stitches the next. I love just the back and forth kind of gives you a breath of fresh air after the heavy moments that she writes. What a warm story with a lot of feeling. I loved it. All right, let's get into our ratings. Angst.
Okay, Angst. It was just a 1.5. It has some serious components, but because of that humor that she keeps throughout, it didn't feel like it was weighing me down personally.
I was close. I did too, and it's the female main character's actions specifically that really had me on edge for most of the story.
I could see that. Yes, yes.
All right, humor.
Okay, humor, it was a 3.
I gave it a 4.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. She's so funny.
So many laugh out loud moments, full of wit, full of charm. The male main character is full of humorous wit, which I just found delightful.
He is just off the chart. He was so incredible. Right from the beginning.
Spiciness.
It was just a 1.25.
It was lower. I did 0.5.
Yeah, I think it was more like tension.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There's some good tension, but yeah, it's a clean story.
All right, tears.
Like a 2, because I felt sad for the characters. I could bump it up.
I did 2.5.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think with this one, it kind of just depends on how much it hits home, maybe. I don't know.
There's some heavy mental health elements to the story, and I did cry, shockingly, a handful of times.
Yeah, I did too. There's some sad stuff, but it doesn't feel like overwhelming. It's like certain moments that you really feel for the characters. So yeah.
I agree. Overall,
this was a 4.5 for me.
I did a 5.
It's so good. This
was the story that I needed. It hit all of the little things that I needed in a story at the moment that I read it. It's the perfect mix of humor and depth. It's emotional. It's heartfelt. I do want to note for the deeper discussion that there are characters in this book that do cross over from Abby's story part of your world. So if you want to avoid spoilers for that book, I recommend reading that one before you do this one. But overall, this story was fantastic. Chef's kiss.
Loved it.
That concludes a spoiler-free quick review of this story. Now we're going to shift into a deeper book discussion. It's going to include lots of spoilers. So if you haven't read this story, go check it out and then join us back here for our deeper discussion. We would love to also connect with you on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Post-Book Depression Podcast, on Facebook in our Post-Book Depression discussion group, and you can also email us at postbookdepressionpodcast@gmail.com. The opening scene of this story is so funny. There's a Reddit thread that Justin posts. Do you use Reddit?
No.
I don't either.
No.
My husband does all the time, but I've never really been a Reddit fan. So it was very delightful for me to read this post and the interaction of the people. Let's get going. Let's dig in with this Reddit scene.
Okay, because I wasn't super familiar with Reddit, so I was kind of confused when he has it titled, Am I the A-hole? When you go through what he wrote, it is so unbelievably funny, talking about naming his dog after his best friend that ended up engaged to a girl that he had been dating and stuff, and everybody's on him like, change the dog's name. Amy, I was laughing so hard through this whole
and
entire
the Toilet
scene.
King.
Oh,
the big billboard outside his window.
I had to Google to see if that was real.
Well, she talks about it at the end of the book. Like,
and
there's a section like in an author's note or the Q&A section at the end of the book.
That.
She talks about she actually based that on a real company and then realized it would be more fun to create a fictitious company that she could do whatever she wanted. She actually reached out to the company it was based on and they gave permission for her to use it in the story, but then she realized it would be more fun for her to do her own, so she made it up.
Oh.
But it was based on a real company.
Yeah, because that's what their billboards look like. Okay. Oh, whoa. Could you imagine that being your view? That was just, that scene.
No, but I
was
love
the
that
best.
it's an ongoing joke through the whole book.
I know, I do too, that everybody's like, change the dog's name. And then she, especially when we get into Emma, and she doesn't want him to change the dog's name, which is so funny. But we have to be clear, the dog's name is not really Chad.
No.
It's Brad.
It's Brad.
He changed it to protect
his best friend.
his best friend. So it's really Brad the dog. But yeah, that scene was just incredible. And no, I don't think he's the a-hole because
no,
it just everything about them, like, yeah, no, you're not. You're not. It's definitely the others.
This post is what really, well, it's Emma's friend who sees the post, shares it with Emma, and they realize Emma thinks that's me. I have that same problem. And Maddie, her best friend, encourages her to comment and let him know that he's not alone. And when she does, that's what kind of opens up the opportunity for them to start sending DMs back and forth to each other and shifting into the idea of them doing this experiment, this dating experiment that will hopefully cancel out each other's problem.
I think that this is so comical, and I really truly want to know if there is a person out there. There has to be a person out there that everybody they date, the next person that they date after them, they meet their soulmate. Because could you even imagine, like, how many times in a row it seems to happen to him and to her that they date somebody, they break up, and then that person goes on to get married with the next person. I mean, you just kind of have to wonder, is this real for somebody? Because
surely it is.
Oh, I bet it is. But then I mean, me being the way I am, I'm like, it's funny in a book. These are two normal people. But in real life, it's like, what's wrong with you, dude? You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be something wrong with you.
I was here for their dating experiment agreement. I loved the idea of them trying to see if they could cancel out this curse, quote unquote curse, that they feel like they're under. And so they decide they're going to do this. However, there's a little bit of a caveat in that she's a traveling nurse. Her and Maddie are traveling nurses. They go around, which, let me pause a moment and just say how stressful that sounds to me as someone who loves to travel. I love the idea of travel, but never having a permanent home, that part I just could not, I couldn't really relate to. So that creates a problem for their starting dating experiment timeline because they're scheduled to go to Hawaii next. And he lives in Minnesota.
I know. I think it was funny because she didn't really believe that what the experiment would actually cancel out anything, but
she was willing to give it a try.
Like, yeah, I'll give it a go, whatever. But he was the one thinking, this could really work.
And then when they start talking to one another, they realize that there is a definite chemistry between one another. They're spending a lot of time on the phone and they're texting, and they're really starting to build this camaraderie between the two of them and really discovering that there is chemistry there and potential for something more. But neither one of them are really talking about that to each other. It's more with their friends.
I know. You know, I love that. That's how she wrote their relationship to be, because we've talked about these people that you meet and you just have this instant connection where you just click immediately. and you're able to confide in or talk about certain things. And they definitely, Emma and Justin definitely had that right from the get-go. So I love that aspect of their relationship. Even through before them even meeting in person, they had this really strong connection, which is kind of what motivates Emma to present to Maddie.
Yeah.
Let's go to Minnesota. It's so great.
I love the presentation that she had, and Maddie knew immediately, you're up to something.
I know. Well, and I love that she was like, hold on, wait. And then she has like the thing that's going to sell it for her. And then what was it she said? She called out one place that they had to stay in that was so awful. The worst place. And she's
Maddie
like,
had
how
picked
could
it.
you? How could you?
We agreed we would never bring that up.
I know. It was just the best conversation.
I agree. Let's spend a few minutes talking about Emma and Maddie and their friendship, the foster family aspect. Let's just dig in for a couple minutes and talk about their relationship.
Right. So they're very close friends. They're kind of more of a sister relationship. You've already mentioned that they're traveling nurses. And Emma, her mom, we will delve more into this a little bit later, but she was neglectful. And so Emma has to be put into foster care when she was young. She goes to live with Maddie's family. And it's kind of, you can tell that there's some tension because Maddie's parents wanted to adopt her, but she did not want to be adopted. And so you kind of get, it's a little bit of a sore spot, I think, for Maddie, but they've remained incredibly close friends and, you know, they work together. I have to say, in the beginning, I kind of felt like I wasn't sure about Maddie. How did you feel about their relationship?
In what way? What were you unsure about?
I felt like every time she was presenting, you need to be there for our parents and, you know, trying to like get her to go home to see their parents and stuff. It felt very forceful because we don't know quite the extent of Emma's relationship with her mom at that point. And I kind of felt like I didn't think it was fair of Maddie to make Emma feel like Maddie's parents were her parents. You know, she already didn't want to be adopted by them. Yes, that they helped raise her from her teen years on, but
it wasn't that I didn't like Maddie or I didn't really feel that pressure so much from her on the family side of things. I think my opinion of Maddie really started to form early on when I could sense that she was protective of Emma, especially when Amber comes into the picture, and Maddie is very against Amber and the way she treats Emma. And so I didn't really, in the initial part of the story, I wasn't really focusing so much on the way she was treating Emma, more so than I did when I started seeing her reaction once Amber came into the picture. So it hadn't really crossed my mind so much to be off-put by Maddie's actions because I was really focusing more on Emma and Justin in the initial part of the story, I think. Let's shift over a bit and talk about Justin and his family. We're gonna move back to Emma and her mother in a little bit, but I want to start with Justin's family. We don't know initially what has transpired with Justin's mom. We just know that she has done something that is going to cause her to go to jail for multiple years, and he's going to take on the guardianship of his siblings. He has 3 siblings. I want us to dig in a little bit into this dynamic, their family relationship, and all that entails. Let's just knock that chunk out right now and talk about their family, about his family.
Okay, well, I was very surprised that his mom was going to jail. I did not see that coming at all. Like when he goes and takes them dinner or whatever it was, and he's kind of not super open with his mom. You can tell that there's some tension there. So when it comes out that she's going to prison and he has a lot of just anger, because it's not just his mom is going to prison. They lost his dad. His dad died a few years back. And his youngest sister doesn't remember his dad. She was a baby. So she's not even quite 5. And he has to take on a young child, a preteen girl.
Oh my.
Yikes, bless him. And a teenage boy.
Yeah.
So he loves his siblings.
Yes, he does.
Their bond that he has with each of them is so incredible. But he also feels the weight of the world on his shoulders because now he's responsible for raising these 3 kids and making sure that he's there for them emotionally and just everything that they need in life now is falling into his lap. And I think that is really kind of a struggle for him. But it's so interesting to me because he's dealing with all this really heavy stuff, but yet he still has this time for these DMs and these experimental dates. And I think
it's like a reprieve for him a little bit from the heaviness of his life.
Yeah, it gives him that one kind of last, I'm doing this for me thing, even though the timing is absolutely horrible. I did kind of struggle a little bit with that. Like, if this was really happening in real life, would you be so focused on trying to do experimental dating to break a curse, quote unquote curse?
But at this point, he's starting to have that connection with Emma. And I think, there's that new excitement of a new relationship. There's the joy that brings and something to look forward to. I could see that happening in real life of someone who's just needing a break from reality for a bit. Yeah. Especially because she's not, at the time that connection is building, she's not there in Minnesota with him.
Right.
So he's able to kind of have this double life. He's got the heaviness of his family and the responsibility of that. And then in his downtime, he can have this connection with Emma via the interwebs.
Yeah, but how would it be in his downtime? Because she bumps up her timeline of coming there. He would have already had custody of the kids.
Yeah, but at that point, they've had, a little bit of time to establish at least a friendship over the phone and over DMs.
That's true.
So if nothing else, having some kind of lighthearted
Listen, I was all for him having that. The guy has everything, like his whole world is just like coming down around him, and it's really heartbreaking. But at the same time, like, dude, how do you even have time for that? That's like a lot. A lot
to process.
Yeah.
I know this is skipping forward a bit, but because we're talking about his family, I want to talk about the scene where they are actively dating, and he has the thought that he's very angry with his mom because of her choices and actions that she made. It has forced him into a life he didn't choose, and because of that, he may lose Emma because now he's responsible for kids, and she's made it very clear she does not date guys with kids. And I want to spend just a couple of minutes briefly talking about this scene where he's feeling very angry with his mom and in his inner dialogue is trying to process these feelings.
I felt every emotion he felt was so genuine and real to how a person would feel. Because, number one, I commend him for even stepping up, because they could have gone to his mom's friend. Was it Lee?
Lee.
I mean, they could have gone to live with Lee. He didn't have to take guardianship, but he didn't want their life to be uprooted anymore, and all these changes any more than it had to be. So I understand like his need to protect his siblings, to raise his siblings, to be there for them during this time. But I also understand that anger at everything about his life. I mean, the guy's almost in his 30s. You sit there and you think this could really put your life on hold for the next 6 years.
Yeah.
And, you can't do the things you want to do. It's mentioned at one point, she's a traveling nurse, and he's thinking, the option to get up and travel with her isn't even a possibility.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even have that choice. So I felt like everything he felt is really how you would feel. You would be angry because your whole life, all your choices and options have been taken away.
Yeah, I felt like his feelings were definitely justified in being angry with his mom for her choices and the impact that it had on him and the kids as well. Another thing that I want to talk about in regards to his mom involves Emma, and it's the conversation where Justin starts to open up to Emma about the past and his father and all of that, and Emma starts to dissect maybe it was more than just grief she was going through. Maybe there was some postpartum depression in that. And she makes the comment, I loved the analogy that she used about the ice cracking and it expanding. It really opened my perception of how Justin's mom processed things through that analogy. So I love that the author used that analogy to describe that. But I really, really love that Emma continually says, have empathy, choose empathy. If you can, extend empathy. I love that about her. So I just briefly wanted to talk about that and kind of the parallelism between her saying have empathy which she continually does for her mother too. And I know we haven't jumped into Amber yet. We'll go to her next, but I want to kind of talk about her choosing empathy and encouraging Justin to do the same.
Without talking about Emma and Amber, as far as I do feel like Emma, when we do dive into Amber, she chose empathy way more than she should have.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that she was able to point that out for Justin, because I do feel like in Justin's situation, and plus it was just so good to choose empathy over anger. And isn't that the way she phrases it? Empathy over anger. I felt like it was so fitting for Justin because he just knew his mom screwed up royally, and he never really stopped to think about the timeline of them losing their dad, the fact that she had just had a baby. That baby was just a few months old. I mean, I don't even think she was a year old.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that there could be some postpartum in that, and that she was drowning in her own grief. I was glad that she opened his eyes to that, because, you know, when we finally find out the timeline of when his mom did these things, to me, I'm like, that's fairly obvious. That she was struggling with grief. She was struggling with some kind of postpartum, surely, and made some very poor decisions in that time. I was glad that she was able to kind of open his eyes to that, so that before his mom left for prison, he was kind of able to see her circumstances differently, see it through the lens that she's been looking through, and not so much just him being a young man and seeing his mom make really bad decisions and the effects that how it impacts their family and his siblings.
That scene where it's her last day before she goes to prison. Wow. The fact that she wanted everything to feel normal, I really loved that about her. But then the goodbye scene where Justin hugs his mom and his mom just starts sobbing. That was an emotional scene for me. That was one that I teared up in. I might have cried, I don't recall, but I definitely teared up. It hurt my heart for all of them.
It definitely made you too also think about people who go to prison, and once again you have to stop and think, not everybody that goes to prison is a horrible person.
Right.
You know, sometimes there are people who make mistakes, make colossal mistakes, but it has, you know,
consequences.
It has consequences, and this is an example of a family that it was high.
I said we were going to come to Amber next, so let's jump down and talk about Amber. I know it's a little bit later in the story, but let's go ahead. So we've hinted about Amber, so let's go ahead and shift over to Emma and Amber.
Okay, well, let me kind of say, at the beginning I didn't like Maddie because of just I didn't understand her obsession with Emma and her parents and that connection, and then the way she was kind of always hateful about Emma's mom. But then when we meet Amber, I very quickly thought, oh, okay, that's why you're so overprotective, and that's why you think the way you do. I'm like, okay, no, I really, really, really like you. So Maddie at that point no longer kind of annoyed me because of the way she was behaving, but became somebody that I thought, oh, you had the bigger picture when I didn't. Amber is just the worst mother. She's the worst mother I could think to have for a child. Amy, the scene where it talks about Emma being a child and Amber has left her for days, because she would leave her for days, and she goes to the neighbor's garden and is digging up their vegetables so she can eat. I cried.
Well, and when the revelation comes to light about Amber being at her family's 4th of July celebration during that time, that gutted me. That was a scene I cried in as well.
Yeah. When Emma finds out that she has a brother who is raised by her grandparents, because her whole life her mother has told her there is no family, she has no family, and you think to yourself, this woman is very severely mentally unwell. She needs some help.
Yeah.
And at one point I'm thinking, okay, what are we talking about? Like, did she lie? What are her reasons for lying? But then when it comes to light, that the reason why Amber lied is she didn't want them to take her. And she knew how good her life would have been with her grandparents. Oh. I instantly was like, okay, the empathy needs to stop.
Yep.
No more empathy, Emma.
Yeah.
No more empathy. Your mother does not care about you.
She had empathy to a fault.
It was so to a fault. It was so to a fault, and I admired it in the beginning, and then the end, I thought, you are breaking your own heart. Because I do feel like there is a point with people that you have to say, enough.
Set some boundaries.
I choose me.
Yes.
It doesn't mean I don't love you or I don't care about you, but I choose me in this moment, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So it was very nice when she finally got to that. But when her mom, did you not question? Okay, so we know that they get to Minnesota, obviously.
Yes.
They're living on this island. She has a conversation with her mom, and then her mom shows up. Were you suspicious in that moment? Because I was not thinking, I just thought, that's weird. But then when Maddie thinks, okay, she totally looked this guy up. She saw how much money he has, and now she's here.
So this is where my train of thought went for a hot minute. When they got there, well, because Amber hinted on the phone, that was where she was from. So when she told her that's where she was headed, I was not surprised Amber showed up. I did think, because when she had shown up, Maddie had already encouraged Emma to do a DNA test.
Right.
So when Neil came into the picture for a brief moment, I entertained the idea that, yes, that Neil was going to be her dad. Now, I mentioned in the quick review that there were going to be some characters crossover from Part of Your World. Neil is a character from that, and it had been a little bit since I'd read, I think it's been 2 years since I read that book. So while I didn't put two and two together until much later into the story, when people started hinting about him being a really not nice dude, that's when I started picking up on the clues of remembering him from the first story. So I thought for a minute he was the dad. So I was pleasantly surprised that Neil was not the father in the end. And while we're on the topic of Neil, I really, really, really thought he was going to turn into a good dude. I just got the feeling, even knowing how he was in the first book, which he was not a good dude. You get that vibe just from the characters in this story. I thought, he's trying, especially the scene where Amber is throwing things at him and he doesn't leave and he ends up going back in, helping her into a bath. I saw a softer side to him there, and I thought, he's making some personal changes in his life. So when the scene comes, when Amber catches his house on fire and he just is standing there smiling, I thought, okay, Neil's not going to get his happily ever after, and I'm okay with that based on the first story I read about him. So I kind of was back and forth. I really thought he was going to be a good guy for Amber. In the end, Amber still had the choices that she made, and she didn't make the right one. So the fact that her and Neil's relationship imploded was not surprising.
Yeah, that was a dumpster fire, wasn't it? There was so much. When she walks in and her mom is like painting this mural on the wall and all the flowers, but then weeks later the flowers are like rotting and the housekeeper was not having it.
Oh, I know.
I know. And I'll tell you something, when that was happening, like, you ever meet a person that they have really high highs and then really low lows? She's definitely manic. She had some manic tendencies for sure. She was not well.
The relationship between Amber and Emma was certainly toxic, and so I struggled. That's where some of the angst came in for me with Emma specifically. One was her relationship with Amber and just that push and pull and her just waiting and waiting and waiting for her mom to finally treat her right. And it's just years of bad behavior, of being treated wrongly by her mom, that she's conditioned to just be living in hope, essentially. But also with her need to run. That's where a lot of the angst came in for me. When she makes herself small, when she goes into these episodes, I just was bracing for impact through the entire story.
I was too. That was where most of the angst pretty much was for me, because I don't relate to a runner. I relate to people who stick around and let's communicate. Let's have a full conversation. I understand needing space. I'm a person who needs space, but the need that she needed to get small, and that Maddie knew, if don't leave her during those moments because she won't come back. So, and again, that's where Maddie, I was like, okay, you were really like the most incredible friend, because she stayed with her all these years because she didn't want her to run.
Almost put her life on hold just
she
to
really
be supportive of Emma, which we kind of learn at the end.
Yeah.
What a solid friend.
I know. This is so incredible. So, yeah, I don't know. That whole her mother and her relationship was very toxic, and Emma just had so much trauma that she really needed to deal with, which she does. She gets into therapy, she gets some help, and is able to. Some of the therapy sessions that she goes through, I had to look up
EDRM, EDRM.
Yeah, I had to look up. Okay, what is that?
I've known people to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it can be very traumatic.
I imagine
the way that, and I'm not a psychologist or a counselor, but just from my experiences through people that I know who have done it, it brings up a lot of the past. It stirs up a lot of emotions, and for the people that do it, they can go into a depression or a very down state for days after that because it's so emotionally draining of them and physically draining. They tend to turn inward on themselves. It's very common because they're having to deal through all these heavy emotions that process brings up for them. But it can be healing as well as they work through it.
I imagine that wouldn't be good for her because that's already her go-to is to turn in to herself. But
because we talked about, and I know we're kind of skipping around a little bit, we're going to get to the happy stuff with their relationship. but because we've talked about her being a runner, when he asks multiple times for her to stay and choose him and stay and choose him, the scene where he's on the phone with her and she rings the doorbell and she's there with the rose bush that he gifted to her and she chooses to stay with him. Sarah, I cried because I did not expect her to stay. I fully expected her to run in that moment. And so when she decides and chooses to stay, it made me emotional.
Yeah.
I loved it. And then they plant the rose bush. I know we're jumping around and I want to get to their dating and all the happy things. But because we were talking about her being a runner, I wanted to make note of the fact that her choosing to stay was surprising to me. Let's go to something more delightful. Okay. Like their dating and the fact that he sends surveys and exit reviews. Were you not just rolling at all of the funny, quippy things that he does?
This is the best. And the fact that it's based on a real life couple. I went and researched that couple, by the way. Did you?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I had to. I was like, who is this man? I mean, my dude. Seriously? Okay, guys. If you want a lady to just swoon and forever she is yours, you need to do this. I mean, if she has a sense of humor, you do. Because this was the best. I thought, okay, I wish that my husband had done this. This is the funniest thing.
Did SurveyMonkey even exist when you started dating, though?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't care. He would have been the first. It was the best.
Oh, it was brilliant. I laughed so hard on all of these little things that he would, the pre-date surveys.
I know.
The exit reviews.
It was just the best. Like what to wear, the attire, everything. Everything. It was brilliant.
Let's spend some time talking about their dates.
Okay.
And the many issues that come along with that. But the dates were just, and their connection and their relationship just brought the biggest smile to my face. Let's kick it off with the first date. After their first date, the very first issue that transpires is that Amber arrives. I know we've already talked about that, but that was at the end of their first date. Can you imagine being on a first date and that was your introduction to your dating partner's family?
No, I can't. Especially because she was adamant she didn't want to meet his. So then your mom comes up crazy, jumping off a yacht.
I'm sure that had an embarrassing component for Emma as well.
Yeah.
The second date that they go on, Justin's mom, they're at this antique store, and Justin's mom's friend Lee calls him. And his mom and Lee are drunk. This is her last night before she goes to prison, and they're so drunk. Let's briefly talk about this interruption in their date and the raccoons.
Okay. First of all, they are hysterical, so they have that in their favor, that they're not mean or weepy. But the fact that they were getting kicked out of Uber and whatever the other one is, I don't even remember. Lyft, yes. Because they had raccoons, baby raccoons in their bras. When they tell the story of the one when they were in the car and it came out in the driver, Oh, I was dying. I'm like, what is it with these stories and raccoons? They're always bringing in raccoons.
Because they're so cute.
I would freak out. I'd freak smooth out if somebody came to me with a raccoon. I love
raccoons. They're so cute.
Oh gosh, no, it's a pass for me. They're cute from a distance.
I think raccoons are my 4th favorite animal.
Okay, well you can keep your trash pandas. That's what
I love them.
I can't. But they were just, I can't even imagine, that's how you're meeting.
I love that Emma was adamant on not meeting his family, and then once she gets into this ride with them, she's very invested in the story.
She's the one that makes them go get them.
I know.
It's fine, let's go. Yeah.
And then they're telling the raccoon story, and she's very invested in what's happening.
I know. Yeah. No, that would be a hard pass for me, but at least they were happy drunks.
Speaking of hard pass, the 3rd date.
Oh, okay. The last 2 really get me, Amy. These are the 2, like, my living nightmare. I can't even tell you. Okay. Let's just get through it quickly.
Lee has the kids, and she calls because the kids have lice.
Blah.
Have you ever had lice?
Yeah, when I was in grade school. Who hasn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was going to die. I paced my kitchen floor. I remember it to this day crying, like praying. It was so hard. Just take it away. Take it away.
Yes.
It was awful. I think I was in 3rd grade the first time that happened. It was a small classroom, and it was like, I don't know what happened.
It just kept being
everybody. It's like somebody was not getting their head cleared because 3rd grade was, I have a lot of PTSD. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't. So this scene, did your head just get itchy?
Oh,
You're
yes.
like, yeah, I couldn't. Nope, let's move on. Didn't like it.
Even just talking
Bad
about
date.
lice. One thing I do want to talk about in the lice situation is the connection that Emma gets to have with Sarah. Because Sarah's been a little bit rebellious. Mm-hmm. She's very vulnerable with her mom not being around. She doesn't really connect with Justin very much. And she starts to have a little bit of a connection with Emma. And I love the scene where she asks Emma to be the one to help her with the lice. And they're in the bathroom. And she's talking about how, your mistakes or your problems just help you empathize with someone else who's going through something. And they were able to share a connection in that scene. And I just love that.
I love that she took a traumatic experience for Sarah and dyed her hair.
Yes.
Let her pick the colors because that was like,
too.
she told Justin, when that happened to me, this is what they did for me. And it just made me feel better in that moment. It took something that was very awful and made it not as awful. So that was really sweet.
One of the things that I want to talk about, and we'll get to the final stomach bug I do want to just stay here a little bit on the fact that Emma is connecting with his siblings, because I think that really is the foundation for why she doesn't want to date someone with kids, is because she knows she's going to connect with them and she doesn't stay.
Yeah.
Let's just talk briefly about her relationship with these kids and how she's starting to build this connection.
She's so sweet, especially with Chelsea, because she's little, she's young, like 4 or 5 years old. And then obviously she builds a rapport with Sarah, and I think that his brother just probably is like, oh, hot lady in the house, like a typical teenage boy. But they're all really kind to her and really sweet to her, and
accepting,
they want her around, and she, but yeah, she definitely has that. She doesn't want to be so connected to them, but I love that she allows herself to become that. I love that she allows herself to build these relationships, even though it's not what she would desire. But I think that that's more just her personal.
I think so too.
Fears of she being neglected and being left behind, and that she has the tendency to run, but she doesn't know that that's what that is.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's move over to the final date, if you want to call it a date. Let's talk about the stomach bug.
Let's get through this so fast. This is a phobia of mine.
But there's some things here we need to unpack. So just grab your barf bag or whatever.
Don't say that.
She's ill. She has a neurovirus, and she's violently ill. And she's on the island alone because Maddie has gone home to be with her family. So she's having to deal. She doesn't have food in her house.
Yeah.
She doesn't have medicine, and she's on an island.
Yeah.
No way to come and go. She doesn't have strength for that. This takes place a few days. He's calling her and trying to check up on her. They've had a little bit of a tiff, so they aren't really talking at the moment, and he's feeling like she's ignoring her because of their little tiff that they've had, but really she just has zero strength and she's sleeping and she's violently ill.
Yeah.
When he realizes that and he comes to her rescue, friend, The fact that he has to take the unicorn floaty.
Oh my goodness. It takes him an hour to get. Can you even imagine?
No.
Ugh.
The fact that he does that. And
He's a hero.
the author does talk in the Q&A at the end of the story about the symbolism of the unicorn in the story, because Stuffy is a unicorn.
Yes.
So the unicorn kind of plays a lot. She has this connection to the unicorn and the fact that he chooses the unicorn to come and rescue her. There's a lot of symbolism and crossover in that. Also making mention of the fact he had Stuffy fixed.
Yes.
Brought back to complete restoration as best as he can on her birthday. Loved that. And so he gets there and starts taking care of her. First of all, I just can't even imagine. Gross. Gross. Someone that you're dating and them seeing you like this, you're not really
I know, you're most vulnerable.
I know.
Jeez Louise.
And I just loved that they had this isolated forced proximity trope for just a little bit, even though under the circumstances I would have picked something different for them.
Well, I love that he had friends that were doctors
Yes.
that were able to come and like treat her, but man, Amy, all the things he does, he gives her food, he does all those things, but did he have to go down?
Well, you knew he was gonna.
I know she tells him it's very contagious.
I knew instantly when she said that, I said, he's definitely getting it.
Oh, I'm telling you, when the doctors came and they were like, it's okay, this is a date night for us, I was like, ugh, no. Like, you doctors are so weird. Okay, I think I have a legit phobia of vomiting because nothing stresses me out. I get anxiety. If I hear my kid cough at night, in general, I know I don't do well. It's gotten really, I should go back to therapy. But this scene, Amy, the lice got me. But then this, and I cannot tell you, Abby, if you listen to this, how dare you? I cannot tell you. I had to focus so hard on, okay, let's look at all the good things that are happening. Because I was like, do I feel okay? Does everybody feel okay in the house? Are we all okay? Is everybody okay? Like, my son coughed at night, and I was like, what's happening? Is he sick? Do we need a bucket? What's going on? What's happening? This bug! I can't. Moving on. Can we wrap up this date? Any points you need to make real quick?
Yes, there are some points here.
Okay.
It is in the moment when she finally comes out of her stomach bug and he has fallen asleep in the room with her, and she realizes in that moment he didn't want to sleep. He didn't want to assume he could sleep in the bed with her. He made the choice to curl up in a little ball under the window, and he didn't sleep in the living room because he wanted to be near if she needed. It's in this moment that she's starting to realize, I have feelings for this guy, and they're deeper than just feelings of like. And it isn't until he has the reciprocal sickness and they're kind of recovering from that. They've had the little Nerf war. They're finally starting to get a little bit intimate. And she has the realization, I'm falling in love with this man. And it just made my heart swell when she realized that. It doesn't last long because Maddie comes home and kind of ruins the moment.
Listen, the moment was ruined for me because I wanted to say, where's the toothpaste and the toothbrush? Did anybody scope after all of this? That was in my head. I couldn't even enjoy the fact that they were like having...
She brushed her teeth. She talked about brushing.
Did he?
I'm sure she had an extra toothpaste.
Amy can't do it.
We're going on the assumption he borrowed a spare. No, they didn't share. He borrowed a spare toothbrush so that you can get on board with the fact that they were intimate.
It was very sweet. I loved the moment. So sweet. They bonded over a stomach bug. If you can love somebody through that or renovation, you can last forever. Okay? Can we move on? I'm starting to feel ill.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Justin is starting to adjust to his new life. I know that he took a reprieve to be on the island with them through their sickness, but he has to get back to his life, his kids, or his siblings, and he's starting to make adjustments. He's kind of getting into the groove, and he's feeling like this could be a real thing. Maybe she'll choose me, she'll stay, and lo and behold, she gets a call that Amber is out of her mind. The housekeeper has called her and said that Amber is throwing all of Neil's things out the window and she better come now because she's not cleaning it up. And this is really what starts on the downward spiral of both Amber and Emma.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
It's a dumpster fire.
Yes, it is. That's
it's a lot. And And I love that when she goes and there's just this massive mess. I can't even imagine. She's cleaning up. Maddie's cleaning up. I love that Justin shows up and then meets her in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this moment, you know, that and she's still trying to take care of her mom. And I don't know, somebody who can show up for you in these moments where their life is already being turned upside down, that they can still be with you when your life is chaotic. I don't know. It just said a lot about his character. What did you think of all of it?
I completely agree with that. And it's in this moment also that Maddie knows immediately that Emma's going to make herself very small, smaller than she's made herself in a long time. She's taking on a lot of the weight of Amber, and she warns Justin. And this is the scene where Emma actually gets into an Uber and leaves. It's so disheartening because, well, one, I love that Maddie had the foresight to track her luggage and finds her. And Emma makes the choice that she wants to say goodbye to Justin. She feels like he deserves that. And the scene where she's leaving, I definitely cried in the scene, especially when she makes the question, what do you think she'll be like? The girl you meet after me, your soulmate.
Oh, yeah, I cried.
I bawled like a baby.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, she's willing to walk away from him to protect. She realizes that she's not in a mental state to be a part of the kid's life and the back and forth whiplash of the instability in their lives. And she doesn't want to attribute to that. So she's making the choice to walk away, which was heart-wrenching. She's learned about her brother Daniel, which we briefly talked about a little bit. And so she's making the choice to go there and recover.
I was very proud of her because she definitely needed it. And I will say, as hard as it was for Justin to have her walk out of his life, I think if he really truly stopped and thought about it, she really was doing not only what was best for her, which was very important. She's been through enough trauma in her life, but what was best for everybody. I don't know how I would feel if he was just okay with her staying and not getting help, because she clearly needs to work through her childhood trauma. She needs help. And so I was very proud of her for walking away, because it was hard for her. It was hard for Justin and for the kids, you know, but it was very admirable that she did it.
I agree. And it has been quite, there's a time jump for sure when she's coming back. I love the fact that she had already made the decision to come back to him. She doesn't know. She just gets little glimpses through Sarah's Snapchat of him, but she doesn't really know if he's moved on from her. And it's her that actually calls and needs rescuing from school.
When she's already on her way there, which we have to state. She was already on her way there, and Sarah calls,
The chapter of Justin's point of view when she's back, and he's not really sure why, you know, he's really processing through those emotions. Everything he thought, I felt just deeply for him.
Yeah.
And felt those feelings were justified. And he, as she's leaving, he's asking her to leave. She speaks her truth. And that was an agreement that they made early on, that they would be honest with one another. And even though he didn't ask her directly, she speaks her truth in that moment. And because she does, that leads to them having some open communication. Yeah,
well, I felt like she was a little bit not, like, she could have been more clear when she first got there, because he thought she came for Sarah.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, miscommunication alert. Please fix this. But yeah, when I was very proud of her because my heart just kind of dropped whenever, I mean, we know it's going to end well, but when she gets up to go, and I'm like, what? No, somebody needs to start fighting. Quickly, fight for this. So when she finally comes clean with everything she's feeling for him, I was so relieved, even though I knew it was coming, that he tells her he loves her too, you know, that she's who he wants, because he didn't want to feel that way. He didn't want to accept her because he didn't know if he could trust her.
Yeah.
And I think that's valid. That's
Absolutely.
A valid point, you know, but it ends so well.
Let's wrap it up with their HEA.
It just made me so happy.
I know.
I love it.
The Reddit thread.
I love that. Yes, the Reddit thread. I love that they end up together. I love that they never change Brad's name.
Me too.
And I love that, you know.
That dog, by the way, I had to Google it.
Yes.
So funny looking.
I love it. It's the best. It's so funny. But yeah, they just had the best happy happy ever after. So it made us very happy. Well, that wraps up our discussion of Just for the Summer. Thank you for joining us on this episode. We hope you enjoyed it and want to continue the discussion with us. We would love to hear from you. What were your favorite parts of the story? Hit us up on Instagram at Postbook Depression Podcast or on Facebook in our Postbook Depression discussion group. You can also email us at postbookdepressionpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, keep reading.